Welcome to the Breakout from Burnout podcast. This is episode 2 of the Triumph Over Burnout Mum series. I'm your host, Aisha Mohammed. I am a certified life coach and I help mums in their burnout recovery journey. I help them to look into some of the causes and to identify what's going on so that they can turn their burnout around, so that they can find their purpose, align their lifestyle activities with that purpose so that they can live a more fulfilled life and live life on their own terms. So let me tell you a little bit about the Breakout from Burnout podcast, the Triumph Over Burnout Mum series. The reason why I put this podcast together was to be able to highlight burnout, because burnout really is something that was very germane to the office environment, okay? Career-minded people, professionals who would burn out, okay? They would become very stressed and overwhelmed and exhausted and quite detached, not having that love or joy for their work anymore. They would be stressed and sometimes even depressed. This was becoming an issue in the workplace and morale would be greatly affected. So what's happened over time is that it's been recognized that burnout actually transcends the office and actually works its way into other areas of our life, and that therefore anyone can actually encounter an episode of burnout, being burnt out. It's recognized as a real phenomenon. And as I described, you may feel stressed, overwhelmed, suffer with anxiety, feel detached from the people and the places, that you used to love to engage with, that would light you up. You may be snapping at people, not having patience, be very doubtful of yourself, feel incompetent, feel hopeless. These are just some of the things that may happen when you are indeed burnt out. You could be a stay-at-home mom, you could be a carer, you could be a student. It can affect you. So to really highlight the issue and also educate, decided to speak to mums who are who have transitioned out of burnout, so they've basically recovered. And I thought it would be really good for them to share their stories with us so that we have a greater understanding of what is this thing called burnout and how does it affect you? What does it look like? And the fact that there is hope because you can overcome it. You can triumph over burnout. So with no longer delay, let me introduce to you my special guest this week, Charlene. Charlene, how are you, my love? And please introduce yourself.
Hi, Aisha. I'm well, thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Charlene, and I am a project manager by day in finance, and I am a coach part-time. So I teach women how to radically love their bodies. Thank you for having me here today.
You are very, very welcome. And thank you for coming forward to be on the podcast. So we're going to go right into it, Charlene. What happens with your burnout? Tell us the story from the beginning. How did it all start?
Sure. So I had experienced a lot of trauma in my childhood. My parents were in an abusive relationship, and from a very early age, I started getting unexplained health issues. So I would have things pop up like extreme nosebleeds, pain in my legs, and things that the doctors could just never explain to my parents. I took this as normal, and I continued on through life, and I then got married at a very young age. I was 21 years old, and I married someone identical to my own father, not knowing it at the time. So you had these cycles from my childhood that was now continuing in my marriage, and my health deteriorated throughout the years, and we aren't really taught how to deal with emotions, how to deal with trauma, how to deal with much of anything that's required in life, really. And my health, went really backwards to the point where I would have memory lapses. So I wouldn't be able to remember what happened in a day. Did I go to this meeting or didn't I go? And there's no one that you can ask, hey, did I attend this meeting? I had constant fatigue. I was tired all the time. I remember driving and, I couldn't make out which lane the cars were driving. So those were some of the symptoms that I had experienced. I obviously also was anxious the whole time, as you mentioned earlier. So these are common symptoms to have: anxious and overwhelmed. The overwhelm then led me into cycles of depression. And, naturally you go to the doctors, they prescribe you medication. And at some point, I realized that, okay, this is not what I want to be doing. I do not want to continue taking tablets, because your body builds resistance up to serotonin, and you just, take more and more serotonin at the end of the day. So I was diagnosed with adrenal burnout, and I was in hospital, and that was the moment that I decided that, okay, do you know what? I'm actually done with the way that my life had been going. So the relationships that I've been in. And I think that was really a turning point for me.
Wow. That is really, really something. I mean, it's interesting that you ended up with a partner that was very similar to your abusive father. So tell me, what was the awakening point where you really realized that that is what was playing out and you decided to do something about it?
So my starting point was in that hospital bed. I then, in a matter of 10 days, decided that, I'm leaving. I didn't know how, I didn't know where I was going. I didn't, have the finances figured out or any of it, but I decided to leave. So in 10 days, I took my kids, I packed up, and I moved into a new place. And interesting enough, it was into an area that I had not known. So I'd moved far away from everything and everyone that I'd known. And I then started realizing, okay, well, wait a minute, I am playing out the same relationship that I was in with my father and my ex-husband. I was playing that out with myself. And if I wanted to be a better parent, then I needed to start working on myself. And so my children are always a very big part of my why, because, they do what we do. So I had a choice. I could have continued with generational cycles that were playing out, or I could break the cycle, which I did. So my children now have different choices in terms of relationships that I get involved in. So that was really the turning point for me.
That's awesome. You realized your worth and that you actually had a choice and was brave enough to take the action steps to change your situation. And I think that is very powerful and something that is a responsibility that we have to recognize, regardless of what your life circumstances are. You actually can change it and have the duty to yourself as an act of love to change it, and sometimes as women we can feel powerless, or this is our lot, and some women actually see their children as a burden as well, and can feel very disempowered when in situations that aren't serving them. But I think that sometimes you have to get to a low point where you can't really go much lower. You have to come back up, whereby you can summon that inner strength to say, I'm actually going to do something about this. I'm not going to do this. This is not my lot. And I am going to make the changes. And to do it, like you said, you didn't know how, but you worked it out,
Absolutely.
Inner strength. It's awesome.
Yeah, so I think a lot of times we continue as adults seeking that validation that we never got from maybe both our parents, or otherwise one of our parents specifically. And as you say, it's about taking radical responsibility, saying that, okay, do you know what? I'm going to love myself regardless of what anyone else says, regardless of they supporting me in my decisions. I will be that parent to myself. And so this is also a constant process of reparenting ourselves, and as we evolve, our children also then evolve. But I must be honest with you, there were days where my health was at a point where I couldn't function day to day. It was a very big struggle for me to now be the single parent, have all of this extra accountability that I didn't know how to deal with. So I literally could not function day to day. My health was at a point where, I wasn't able to. I was off work a lot. I would sometimes get vertigo. So I couldn't get up out of bed for 3 days. And I was really looking for ways just to improve my health, really. So, as you know, it's a constant process, and I had to start saying no to people, put boundaries in place. I started working with a coach to understand also what my own blind spots were, So now I am in a position where I can self-regulate my nervous system. I recognize when I am playing things out, maybe in the drama triangle, and say, oh, okay, I'm playing out this role. Let me take a step back. So it is a constant process.
It is. And this is one of the reasons why I'm the burnout coach for mums, is what you described. Our children are watching us, So if you're in a state whereby you're not prioritizing your own needs, you're burnt out, you're totally run down, you're constantly serving everybody else, and you're becoming ill, they're watching that. It becomes their norm. You're the number one teacher, from the day that they're born, and they will think that's the way you do things. So when we decide to show them another way, we are, breaking the cycle just out of being an example, so that they will have the ability to cope with life challenges in a way that is positive. And this is something that has to be taught, and for teaching through being is very powerful, extremely powerful. So thank you for explaining that and raising that. And for me, that's why it's so important to be working with mums, because this is the next generation, that we are cultivating and nurturing. It is a huge responsibility. So thank you. So you're describing some of the things that you did, and you mentioned things like boundaries that you had to put in place and to start saying no to people, which is a part of the burnout recovery process. And the fact that we have to continuously practice these things, because if not, we could fall back into burnout.
Absolutely, yes. And the thing is, that's also, as children, we were taught to behave a certain way to please other people. And again, I think it is stuff that we carry over into being adults, and especially being women. We're taught to just give without expecting anything in return. So this is also, that's been a great learning for me, is to say no. It's not only about just the boundaries that don't exist, but it's about saying, look, I'm not okay with this, to whoever needs to hear that. Sometimes it's your parents, and sometimes other family members. It doesn't really matter. But for me, that was a big learning curve, because I used to internalize that, say nothing, and then that would cause illness as well. So that's another big thing that we need to realize, and that I'm teaching my daughter specifically, is your thoughts will affect how you feel physically, right? So as you said, it's amazing and really powerful things that we get to teach our children, even though it's difficult.
Yeah. But after difficulty comes ease, and then inevitably more difficulty. But as we learn to problem solve, we become more resilient, and we're able to make progress, because some people see challenge, trials as something bad. And although it may cause a degree of upset and pain, when you work through that, you find out so much about yourself and your abilities. So it works for good in the end. It works for good in the end. Yeah. It does. And
Absolutely. You know what they say is that the gold is on the other side of the trigger, right? And through our difficult challenges, that is where, we learn our power, exactly as you say. That is where our transformation lies. So it's amazing, really.
it is. So what other things did you actually engage in to be able to make your way out of burnout? One of the things in working with clients and speaking to women online in particular, I've been able to see that burnout is actually a sign of deeper issues. So what other things did you actually do to take yourself from a state of burnout to recovery?
Yeah, sure. So I needed to firstly unlearn, the identity of who I thought I was, and then get to know myself, really get to know myself. That was a very uncomfortable process, thinking about it now. But I had to work through the trauma that I'd been through as a child, and I had to learn and recognize that, okay, I'm not my story. I'm not what happened to me. And when I say that I worked through my trauma, I mean, it doesn't take a day or a week. It took years, right? And as I was doing this, I was rebuilding my relationship with myself, and also the relationship that I had with food and with my body. And by doing that, I mean, actually my entire life transformed. So that is what I've been doing over the years. It's also changing what I think. I had to look at my diet, and diet is not only what you eat, it's what you consume, right? In terms of conversations, in terms of what you consume online, and the people that you surround yourself with, and that type of thing. So that is how I initially started off, but it is my life now. It's become a part of my life, and that is just what I do, is to constantly reevaluate, who's in my life, what boundaries do I need to put in place, if any. And it's constantly up leveling, saying, okay, well, actually, guess what? I've just now upped my standards. So this and this and this needs to change. So that, I don't think that, or for me as a person, rather, that doesn't ever stop. I work with a coach. So, we all have blind spots, and that really helps me to identify where I need to make changes that I can't necessarily see for myself, So that is a way. It's a way of life.
That's very true. It has to become a way of life. That is absolutely fantastic. So how can we keep in contact with you as a coach? How can we keep in contact with you?
You can reach me on my website. So I hope I get the address right. It's https colon, is it a colon? / CharleenTroskie.foundation /
Excellent, great.
I'm also I also have a Facebook business page, so you could reach me there. That is called Charleen Troskie Self Mastery Coach, and you can DM me on my personal profile as well.
Excellent, fantastic. That's great. And likewise, if you want to work with me because you're a burnout mum, you can do so via my website, which is bestyouinmotion.com. Also on my profile on Facebook, you can DM me, and I also have a page, a business page, which is Aisha Mohammed, the Burnout Coach. So you can DM me there as well. So we're accessible to you people, okay? If you want our help with your growth and development, whether spiritual or recovering from burnout, contact us, okay? So I hope that you have enjoyed this, I would say, quite quick episode of Triumph Over Burnout Mum series here on the Breakout from Burnout podcast. But it has been absolutely fully loaded with some valuable content to help you on the road to your burnout recovery, and just for your education to understand more about burnout, how it can start and how it shows up in your life, and the fact that you can actually recover. So join me again next week, Tuesday at 1 p.m. GMT, where I will have another bold and courageous woman who has triumphed over burnout. Thank you. Take care.